All right, 40K enthusiasts, before we get into talking about Wargear, and in particular one of my favorite Wargear items across multiple codexes, the Murder Sword, I wanted to put out a little bit of framework for this question. And with that, the comments on my blog, I really appreciate it. And this podcast, this vlog, is a direct result of that, where we're kind of looking at this question of how does the Murder Sword as Wargear work on the table, and why does it appear that many opponents don't realize the awesomeness of this particular Wargear item until it's too late? And the reason why I appreciate comments on my blog is because it allows me, well, first of all, I'm honored to be a part of your gaming life, and for the time spent taking to pose a question or offer some feedback on my posts and podcasts. But there is this idea of, and I'm not immune from it, the local meta, where we play and how we play, shapes our gaming life. You have friends that are similar. You enjoy certain missions, whether that's competitive or narrative play or a mix between the two. And it becomes really easy, if we're talking about Warhammer 40,000, to think that, well, this is how I play 40K, so this is how everybody must play 40K. And what this allows to happen over time is kind of tunnel vision here. And that's not to say you can't become a good player. That's not to say you can't have a really strong player personality and strong tactica. But if we're pushing ourselves to be better, we want to break out of that local meta. I mean, certainly it shapes us. If you're the only Eldar player in the group out of 15 people and everyone plays Space Marines, yeah, I'm going to pick units that are going to beat on Space Marines, bypass that power armor with AP, get past their they shall know no rules shenanigans and all that type of stuff. But pushing above and beyond that, breaking out of that meta, my secret weapon has always been, but more than ever, is those of you who take the time to comment, read, post, and just offer that feedback. So that's where this was pushing from, this idea of the Murder Sword. Now, in my Berserkers of Scalathrax list, I have always run with the Murder Sword since, how long has this been around here? I think it was in the 6th or 7th edition Chaos Codex. At some point, it became a standard Wargear item. And I found the combination of the Murder Sword jacked up with a Khornate profile. I mean, it seemed natural one-on-one. I was just thinking about a recent battle here. Totally awesome. I mean, when I invoke Khorn, the memories of victory and glory on the table just come flooding in, so I have to kind of regroup here for a second. But that duality of Murder Sword base profile, Khorn jacked up, Juggernaut, and a few other items, and that's what we're going to look at, delivery systems for it, that became, I mean, forget about a narrative perspective, which was fantastic, you know, riding into battle for the glory of Khorn with this demonic weapon, but from an effective standpoint, it worked really, really well. And in many ways, I believe in 8th edition right now, as a character killer, as a character slayer, it's better than ever. I'm going to get a little historic here, just so we know where the framework is. I found, and I'm going to generalize somewhat because we got to cast a wide enough net to catch this. I found in previous editions, the last edition of 40K, certainly the Murder Sword worked against characters. You had to declare one at the time. Well, most people ran one HQ, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Otherwise, it was just kind of a generic power sword, which, hey, still worked with the jacked up Khornate profile and the Juggernaut boon on there. But I found that most players in 40K, and I say most because it's not everyone, and it is my local meta, HQs were not the thing in 7th edition. What was the thing was insane psychic shenanigans, you know, multiple invisibility, multiple regeneration with invisibility, moving all around, just stuff that could not be stopped. Why even bother playing 40K? Those type of units. That was the focus. So you had an awesome Wargear item, and it was fun, and it worked, but it wasn't game-changing. And what I'm noticing now from the Chaos, kind of the generic Chaos Space Marine, Black Legion type perspective with the Murder Sword is it's becoming game-changing. Now, in true GW fashion, will they nullify it and cancel it out in the next codex or next edition? But that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but not really, right? But the idea now seems to be not that it's becoming like 3rd edition 40K Hero Hammer, but it is becoming a little bit more Hero Hammer, where you have these heroes changing things, buffing things, or becoming outright close combat beasts. I just think about how much better I think Swarmlord was great in previous editions. I think it is beast even better now. So we're seeing not only the boosting effects, but we're seeing the spillover on the tabletop of these characters vastly changing the game, affecting the game, almost being mini Sledgehammer Death Star units. So if you have the murder sword that's going to literally murder them, that could potentially be game changing. Where previous editions it was more for the lulls, now it works on there. So my opinion, okay, why? And this is building on the comments, and certainly this is a template that could apply to potentially other pieces of war gear, either in your codex, your army, or what you face in your own local meta. Why do people get punked by the murder sword? Well, I think they get punked by the murder sword, not everyone, but some of us, because you're still, and I don't mean this in a negative way, you're still Theory Hammer. You've never faced it. And the best example was years ago when I was really starting out with my Way of Samhan, a familiar name for those of you who have been following me for a while, when I was playing my Jetbike Jetdar Samhan Eldar extensively. I mean, I can admit this now, right? My life was not very balanced at the time. Obsessed with 40K more than I'm obsessed now. Yes, I was averaging with this army 4 to 6 games a week versus other players. And then on the weekends, I was kind of working through exercise drills and playing some games with friends for 1 or 2 turns, just positional stuff. Or like you throw down some models, I throw down some models, and let's resolve a tactical snapshot. So I made, in addition to my blog Way of Samhan and other things that later evolved into Fritz 40K and Way of Samhan, Fritz 40K, and Wargamer Fritz, the genesis, the evolution, it was transformative and fundamental in my evolution. So I'm playing massive amounts of 40K. I am confident to say I was a good player. I was confident. I felt like, hey, I'll go up against your army. I might win. I want to say I'll win, but if I don't win, it's going to be a close game. You're not going to table me. You're going to be sweating it out, till turn 6. And at that time, Games Workshop had just released drop pods. I know that, well, that kind of dates it, right? You could take drop pods. So people were playing drop pod armies, but they didn't make the kit yet. You had to kind of forge your own kit or go all Forge World. So it's something that was out there. It was something that was in the codex, but people weren't really constructing full pod armies yet. And the rules were broken on there. One of the members of our club, fantastic player, created a drop pod army. And he constructed like 12 of these pods. So we play the first game. Now, look, I had the Marine Codex. I was playing Black Templars, which were their own codex at the time, but I had the Marine decks because sometimes I would cross-play the army with the chapter traits and things for the fun. Theory Hammer, I knew it. I kind of knew it. I knew what it could do. I've never faced it. First time I placed a drop pod army with my Samhan Warhost, which I felt confident about, I got tabled. Tabled turn 1. I mean, literally, I had like a couple of jet bikes and like 1 Viper left. And now I'm going to play the game out, but I was like, what? I knew what was going to happen, but there's a difference between knowing it, Theory Hammer, and having it happen on the table. So sometimes with these various pieces of Arcane and Eldritch War gear, you know the rules, you've seen it, but until it happens to you, but that's a one-hit wonder. Then I think the second layer is where we see HQ choices. There tends to be, if you're a competitive player, you don't want to spend points on an HQ and jacked up war gear. I'm totally kind of contradicting myself here because as a competitive player, I take way too much bling and war gear on my HQs. It's kind of that RPG, D&D, Dark Heresy narrative filtering in there. As much as I'm playing a war game, that's my avatar on the table. I'm the Cornate Lord. I'm in there. We're going to roll with what we got to roll. But a lot of players, they will not take these expensive HQ choices and jack them up. They would rather, and it makes total sense, they would rather spend the points on more units, more dice, more redundancy, more crossability on there. So they don't face regularly, and this is that feedback. If you're in your local group of all, your local meta is all competitive players, and no one really takes this type of unit the first time you face it, or the first couple of times you face it, takes you by surprise. And I think the last reason is that many people in 40K right now, and I say many because certainly not everybody, they focus on volume of dice because that is what wins games. and they're used to facing volume of dice in the shooting phase, as I think we all are. It's like, okay, Fritz, I'm going to shoot into your Cornate Berserkers. I've got 80 shots coming in. That's 45 wounds, make 30 armor saves. And you're like, what? How did you get that many dice? Is that an exaggeration? Is that far off? A little bit of both in there. But we're used to suffering the volume of dice and taking massive amounts of wounds in the shooting phase. Well, we have to maximize, and this is a post for another time, we have to maximize volume of dice in the movement phase, shooting phase, and assault phase, the three main phases of the game. And in the assault phase, often, maybe you have, unless you're running an all close combat army, or you play something like Blood Angels where you might have Death Company or other really orcs too, really rock hard dedicated assault units. A lot of us were not used to generating volume of dice in the assault. It's kind of something that happens where it's like, you know what, tactically it makes sense to assault. So I'll assault, here's my 10 attack dice, and you just kind of resolve it. It's no big deal. When you get hit with something dedicated and you have something leveraging out massive amounts of dice combined with the murder sword where everyone's a potential auto kill, like that's big. That's potent. A lot of competitive players seem to dismiss that. So the next part, because this podcast is already going on, and that's okay sometimes, but we've got to cut it to a tactical level. You take your HQ. You take the murder sword. It doesn't happen on its own. And we'll look at this in the next post and podcast, probably tomorrow or the next day, because I've got to formulate some ideas and crystallize it in notes, and I want to look at some battle report pictures that I have. What's your plan for the delivery system? No one's going to let you roll up there. No one's going to let you get in there and do what you have to do. So you need to have models. You need to have units that will take your murder sword and get it into the assault. That's kind of your first ring. You need your second ring or second layer of units or models that are going to strip away whatever your opponent throws at you to stop you from trying to do that. And you need both of those interconnecting to do it quickly because you're paying the points, you're paying the resources. You don't want to wind up in the assault like endgame. Not that you can do turn one always, but like turn two, I want to be assaulting. Turn two, I want to be putting stuff to the murder sword. Then turn three, I want to be assaulting again. And turn four, and turn five, and turn six, every single turn to not only maximize the point return, there's hard and soft, right? The hard is the point return. I spent this much on a unit, it killed or took out this many points. That's easy to calculate. The soft return is, well, I killed X number of points, but more than that, I kept X number of units, which are equal to X number of points per turn busy. I kept my opponent focused on my Cornate Lord running around. I had him blast my Cornate Lord off the table, and I'm sad-faced, but for that one turn, he shot 8 units into my Cornate Lord. And then the next turn that I had, I was able to capitalize on that because those 8 units were not shooting at other units in my list they needed to shoot at. So these are the equations we want to kind of build on that capstone of the murder sword or of some sort of awesome type of war gear.